Good morning, everybody. A warm welcome to our virtual experience this November. My name is Adrian Greensides and I'm the principal of Spirit Studios, and on behalf of everybody here, all members of staff, I'd like to offer you all a very warm welcome to the day. I'm going to have a quick chat with you this morning, only briefly, for about 10 minutes, and then following that I'll give a final goodbye at around 1:25. So I just want to talk a few things about what we're going to do today. Pretty much our focus of the day is going to be on drums. So I'm obviously sat in a recording studio right now, which is actually called Spirit Studio. This is one of our flagship studios, one of 11 really studios in total that we've got, not including sort of edit suites and Mac suites and so on. So we're going to go through various places today and show you some of those spaces. Louise is going to be in here shortly, and he's going to be doing his session, which is looking at producing a drum recording. After I've finished speaking, we're going to go over to Lauren, and she's going to be concentrating on miking and recording drums. We've got a session for you in our venue downstairs, which is going to be run by Aaron, and Aaron's going to be looking primarily at himself being a drummer as well as an entrepreneur. That will kind of be looking at our degree in focus for this virtual open day, which is our brand new degree, the Entrepreneurial Audio Production degree. We'll have a Q&A session with Louise. So throughout this whole session, in fact starting now, please feel free to add any questions that you've got, and so any academic questions or questions in general that you might have that come up from the day, just put them inside the posts. Louise, as I say, will be on hand at around 12:50 to do that, but after each of the sessions by Lauren or by Aaron or by Louise, if you've got any questions that you'd like to put to them, so about what, for instance, Louise might be doing in here in terms of producing, or what Lauren might be doing in terms of miking, please ask questions, and then we'll put those to the guys at the very end. So just a little bit more about us. So obviously for those, most of you probably aware, we're in the great creative city of Manchester, and just in context, we're about 4-5 minute walk away from Manchester Piccadilly railway station, which is our main railway station of the city. So we're just up the road towards what is the big Apollo Theatre. 11 recording studios, as I say. We've got a venue, we've got edit suites, we've got Mac suites, we've got all sorts of bits and pieces going on, which under normal circumstances, our open days allow people to come in and have a look for themselves and sit in front of a desk where I'm sat right now. Obviously, in the absence of that, we're using some of the new technology that we've got. And this new technology that we have right now is the means as to which you're looking at me, essentially through a GoPro. Obviously, we're also looking at things through Zoom. I'm sure lots of us are all tired of looking at things through Zoom. Zoom is also one of the platforms that we use to teach our students. What you might not also be aware is that since probably March or April, I'd made the choice that we were going to be teaching face-to-face. We are teaching face-to-face. Obviously, it's very complex set of instruments in front of me right now, which requires to a certain extent a lot of face-to-face teaching. So we are doing that, and but equally for those who choose they would rather be online, then we're using this technology that we've got now. Some of the things that you can't see in front of me now, I've got an 8M Mini Pro, which allows me to be able to move through various camera angles. So we'll have various camera angles in every single studio, which we can use to dance around with and to focus on particular areas. Throughout today's session, you'll see that pretty much in use. So that's kind of what students will see who are having lessons. So we could have a camera on myself, there might be a camera on the desk, there could be a camera on the drums and so on. So you'll see that working. So any questions that you might have about some of that technology or how that is interpreted by students, then feel free to obviously answer those questions as well. Sticking to the subject of coronavirus, which is obviously something that we can't get away from, the decision to teach face-to-face was obviously a great decision that needed to be made, and it was a thankful one that we have done. In terms of numbers, we seem to have done this extremely successfully. That's with the help of all students and all staff. As a percentage, in terms of those who are isolating or self-isolating through our student community and staff, it's actually less than 2.5%. There's been no transmissions within the building at all, so we are an extremely safe institution, and we've proved that it can be done face to face. Needless to say, our students are extremely grateful for the fact that it is face to face, and we will continue to keep doing that as long as we have to do that with going online. So that's just a little bit about that. Just like to talk a little bit about a few of our degrees. Obviously, looking at our website, we'll go into greater detail than what I can go into right now, but as far as degrees go, we've got 5 degrees. One of them I'd mentioned, which is our Entrepreneurial Audio Production degree, which pretty much does what it says, is it looks at you, the producer, as somebody that may not be sat in front of a big desk like this. We can, as producers now, write from computers in bedrooms. Albums can be written and produced and mastered from within a small location right now, so everything is kind of somewhat coming right down, but obviously there is still a huge place for recording studios. And so as we look at music production as a degree, we focus on producing music, but obviously looking at it from also a recording perspective. So some of the things today, for instance, how do you mic drums, how do you produce with drums, how do you record them, are all looked at throughout that degree. Then we've got our live degree, which is our live and studio degree, which essentially looks at life from a live perspective. So how do you set bands up for live performances, anything from small performances to large performances. We have performances in our own venue. So for instance, we'll have students as part of their course preparing us for live performances from our venue, which holds about 100 people. Incidentally, we've got a live performance in December in our venue with nobody in it, apart from engineers and our students. And so have a look at that, keep an eye out for that. We'll probably be announcing some of those things soon. So again, quite keen to use our students so that they're aware of what it is that we do. That performance is an electronic music performance. It's by one of our tutors, Danny Skerritt, who is playing with Ruby Tingle, and that's going to be a really good session to do, and it'll give you a little bit of a glimpse of people, some of our tutors like Danny Skerritt, who teaches on our electronic music production and performance degree. All of our degrees are 3 years. They're all validated by UCLan, which is the University of Central Lancashire in Preston. And it's a mix of BScs and BAs and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of information on our website. I could obviously sit here for quite a long time and tell you what's on our website, but I think it would be better if you obviously had a look for yourself in your own time, look at our Instagram channels and so on, and see what it is that we're doing. We're doing an awful lot beyond just teaching. Teaching is obviously primarily what we do. We've been doing that for about 40 years. We're actually one of the original audio schools on earth, essentially. So we set up 40 years ago in the city of Manchester, and we've got to where we are right now. We do lead where others follow, that's for sure. We're doing that right now in terms of the way that you're seeing us deliver what we're doing, the way that we are delivering it. We're very unique. Some of the systems that we've got in place that we can have students. So for instance, you're all looking at me now from wherever you are on the planet, and you can access our machines, for instance. So you could be using one of our you could be using your own computer, your own laptop, with a very small amount of processing power. And excuse me, I'm just going to check the time. No, I'm not. That small amount of processing power, you can access our machines and use all of our software to be able to write and record and experiment from the comfort of your own home. So yeah, we've got all sorts of bits and pieces that we can offer our students of doing that. So I kind of lost my train of thought there as I tried to sort of look over at the time, which is typical of me. Not quite sure what I was going to say, apart from have a great day today, because I know I've been talking for about 9 minutes. Yes, that was it. I was going to talk about some of the extra sort of curricular things that we do from a creative perspective. I've alluded to some of that stuff where we're doing live performances, but we've also been doing some really good stuff at the moment. We did a Q&A session the other night with Voclear, which is one of the brands that we work with. We work very closely with a lot of brands like Voclear or Ableton and so on and so forth, and we do lots and lots of bits and pieces. So my final word then now will be keep an eye on our website, keep an eye on our Instagram channel, and just get engaged with a lot of the stuff that we do, which we don't just do for our students, but we do for all of the city. So I think that is about it. So I'm on 10 minutes. So I'm now just going to switch you over to Lauren, and Lauren is going to start off the day with miking and recording drums. I'll be with you again at about 1:25, which will just be a final goodbye. Normally I'd be answering lots and lots of questions, but today I've chosen to have others do that instead. So have a great day, and thank you for joining us, and I wish you all the very, very best.
All right, thank you, Adrian. So I'm Lauren Crompton. I am an AMPSE industry course student here at Spirit, and today I'm in the Audient 4, one of 4 Audient studios here at Spirit, and we've got the Audient desk here, and I will just get that up for you. So this is the desk we're going to be working on. It's designed as more of a mixing desk. As you can see, each channel has its own EQ. There's also aux sends on here, and they are wired to some of our outboards in this room. There's quite a good selection of outboards in here. So yeah, we've also got a live room in here. You might be able to see through there, which is connected by tie lines. And we can talk to the live room by the foldback that's on this desk. So it's called the Q on here, Q, A and B. So I've got the foldback mic on, and I'm talking to the guys in there. And the guys we've got in there are Chiche, and he is a tutor here, as well as like a live engineer, studio engineer. If Greg's the man, if you want something done. So I'm going to pass it over to Greg, and he's going to talk you through like mic placement, mic choice around the kit, that kind of thing. So Gregor, I will hand it to you.
Thanks, Lauren. Cool. We're in the live room of Studio 4, and we're going to talk about miking up a drum kit. What are we trying to do here? We're trying to capture a performance. We've got Aaron who's going to play the full drum kit, so we would like to record the kit as precisely as possible, and we're going to do that with a mixture of close mics and more kind of distant mics, room mics. Depending on the style of music or the drumming style, you could get away with very few mics. You could have 3 mics on the kit if it's something more spacey, jazzy. If you're going for a massive prog odyssey and there's 5 toms in front of you, you're going to end up with a billion microphones. Here we're kind of doing a standard thing where we're going to have a few close mics on each individual drums. We're going to have a couple overheads, kind of like overlooking the drum kit, to get a rough like overview of the whole kit, and we're going to have a room mic. I'm going to talk about all this in a second. So we're going to start. So we're going to start with a bass drum, and we have today a large diaphragm dynamic mic called the Shure Beta 52, which looks like this. We're going to put it just kind of inside the bass drum, but through the porthole and pointing at the beater. We want to point at the beater because we still want some of that attack of the beater hitting the skin. And I think just this one mic, I've used it before, I'm very happy with it. I think that will give us a nice balance of attack clickiness, but also some low end from the inside of the bass drum. Moving on. We've got the snare drum. We're going to use absolute industry standard, and we're going to go with Shure SM57s. So I've got 2 of them here because the snare drum is actually made of a top skin, and the bottom skin has the actual snare attached to it, which is a metal mesh, which gives us this sound. If If I was to take off the metal mesh, we'd have this, which you could use for some stuff, but we're not going to do that today. So I'm going with a Shure SM57 for the top. I'm going just on the edge of it, and I'm pointing at the center of the skin. Then with another 57, we're going to go under the snare. Let me just drag that in, and we're going to point at that mesh of metal that I was talking about, at the actual snare. I'm going to make sure those mics are not dropping while we're recording. That's always unfortunate when it happens. Cool. Then next to the snare, we've got the hi-hat. There's a lot of high frequencies in there, so I'm going to use a condenser microphone, a small diaphragm, and we have an AKG C451 here, which I'm going to place. I usually like to place it kind of opposite of where the drummer will hit the hi-hat, so usually on the other half circle here. So if Aaron's going to be here, I'll probably go over there. If you really have massive problem with spillage, you can start thinking about having maybe a small baffle between the hi-hat mic and the snare. You can think of a lot of ways, maybe angling the mic, maybe picking a different mic that would have a different pattern, so it's a bit more direct. Then we're going to move on to the toms. For both those toms, we're going to use Sennheiser MD421. They're very good for capturing low end and the attack. So placing a mic like this above a tom, if we're pointing right in the middle of the skin, we're going to get more attack, more of that smack, because obviously that's where the stick is hitting the center of the skin. And if we're going more on the edge of the tom, let me adjust that, we're going to get less of that attack and more of the harmonics from that sound. The closer you get to the skin, the more low end you're going to get. The farther away, the sound's going to open more, and you'll get a more round, full sound. I kind of get maybe 10 centimeters in, and we'll have a listen to what that sounds like. Pretty much the same treatment for floor tom. We're going to get pointing at the edge of the skin. We're going to get probably a bit closer because I like to have a big boomy floor tom. It's just my choice. So that's our 2 floor toms done now. Whoop. We're going to move on to a really fun mic, which is kind of like halfway between all the different drums, and it's pointing at my hips, I would say. And it's got different names. You can find it online. It's called a trash mic or lots of other terms, but it's also called the Wurst because there's an engineer who's made it very popular. He's called Moses Schneider. You should find him online. He's a really funny guy. And the idea of this, it's a microphone that's equally distant from the center of the snare, the center of the floor tom, the center of the tom, and the center of the bass. When I say tom, I mean rack tom. And the center of the skin of the bass drum, basically where the beater hits. And what that gives you is a really full picture of the drum kit. So you can think of that as a bit of an overhead, but with an overhead, something that's above. You get loads of washy cymbals and stuff. Here, we're just gonna get like really aggressive like hits from all these toms. It's a really fun mic when you're mixing, if you want to compress it, put some distortion, it does amazing things. It doesn't have to be the central mic in your mix, but if you raise that up, it will really beef it up and it's gonna be really fun. I've already placed this one because it takes a bit of like back and forth to get it properly, but I'm happy with that. So we've got a Wurst here. The mic we're using for that is an Audient i5, which is a cardioid dynamic mic. You could use a condenser mic on Omni mode, which would record all around it as a kind of a sphere. And you would get kind of like the same effect, but more open. You get a bit of everything, maybe more cymbals and stuff. Moving on, we've got 2 overheads. I've already placed one, and then I'm going to talk about how to place the other one. So we just want like a nice stereo image of the full drum kit. So I'm just going for a spaced pair, which is basically just 2 microphones kind of spaced apart, looking down on the kit. There's a ton of ways to do overheads. There's a billion different placements. They all have characteristics and different sounds and different goals. We're going for a pretty standard overhead mic technique here, which I'm usually very happy with. So the crucial thing when placing overheads is that ideally we would like these two overheads to be at the same distance from the snare. The reason for that is that if we talk about physics of sound just for a second, when I'm hitting the snare, the air is going to move and sound waves are going to hit this overhead and this overhead. If these two overheads are not at the same distance from the snare, then maybe this first overhead is going to get the snare, and then later on we're going to get the snare going into the second overhead. What could result is that these two microphones are capturing the snare, but it's not in phase. What that means is that if we're getting these in the mix, we could have phase cancellation, and for some reason the snare will then sound a bit weak. It's even more pronounced if we collapse our mix in mono, where we have these two overheads, and then suddenly everything is centered, and then we realize, oh wow, the snare is really not in phase with these two microphones. So the way we're going to do this, you could have a ruler, you could just measure from my snare to the first overhead, but we're going to go a bit more traditional and use a cable, and then we're just going to grab the center of the snare skin, go up to the first overhead. If I can do this without making a mess. No, I can't. Give me a sec. Right. Let's do this. So I've got my first length. I'm going to bring that guy in. So that's my second overhead on drummer's right, depending on what perspective you're going for. I can see that it needs to be slightly lower. No, it's still on it. Oh, thank you. Right, that seems to be doing the trick. So we'll start again. From the snare to my first overhead, I'm just kind of pinching the end of the cable with my fingers. So now I've got the distance. I'm miles away, so I'll start again. So I'll need to get it a bit closer, maybe a bit lower. So it takes a bit of time to adjust these two mics together, but it's really worth it because there's ways to kind of fix phase problems and you can delay tracks afterwards in mixing, but you should really aim for optimal sound during recording and not just fixing stuff later in the mix, which is bad practice. Do not do it. Let's try again. We're here, we're here. I'll just move it slightly closer again. And then we'll move on. That will do. We'll just move it slightly here. There we go. Cool. I'll do one last check. That's fine, and that's fine. I'm happy with that. Cool. So now we have our two overheads overlooking the drum kit, same distance from the snare. If I hit the snare, the sound waves are going to hit these two microphones at exactly the same time, or roughly, and we'll have the least cancellation happening. So we'll have a very beefy snare out of these two overheads. And if we collapse that in mono, happy days, no problem either. One last microphone that you can't see, but it's here, trust me. It's out of shot over there. Basically, we're in the live room with Audient Studio 4, and there's a little corridor leading to the door that's going to allow us to leave the room. I've placed a room microphone, so it's a large diaphragm condenser in omni mode, so it's going to capture everything in it. And the reason for that is to get a lot of ambience from far away. We're in this little corridor, and it's quite reflective, it's quite lively, and it's going to add a really nice ambience just in the background of the whole mix. I mean, depending on what you're doing mix-wise, that's fine, but you could crank it up like crazy, but it's usually nice to add some characteristic from the room in your mix. So if I go through all the microphones again, and then I'll go back to Lauren. Bass drum, we've got a Shure Beta 52. Whoa. Snare, we've got a 57 on top, 57 bottom. Hi-hat, we've got a condenser AKG C451. Both toms we have MD421, MD421. We have that Vost microphone kind of pointing at my hips, capturing all the drums around it. Overheads, we have two AKG C214. And then room mic over there, we have a Rode NT2000 in Omni mode. And I think that's everything for me. I'm just gonna double check. I'm just gonna lower this tom because I can see from the drummer's perspective now that I would like it to be a bit different. And that's all good. So I'm gonna pass it on back to Lauren, and then Aaron's gonna sit at drummer's position and they're gonna start sound checking. Thanks, Lauren.
Cool. So, thank you, Greg. As Greg said, we're going to have a drummer, Aaron, coming in. He's a very good drummer. We're going to be having him recording drums to his track, Daydreams. It's quite an electronic track, I guess. It's quite chill, it's quite nice. So just check that he can hear me. Can you hear me, Aaron? Cool. Right, so I'm going to start gaining up. If you want to just start playing around the kit, that kind of thing, I'll start gaining up the mics. So I've got my mics here. So channels 1 to 10, they're running from the live room into the desk preamps, and I've got them into Pro Tools. I'll show you my Pro Tools actually. So that's my Pro Tools session. Cool. So if I start gaining up, I'm going to solo as I gain up, so I can see the meter over in the control section of the console. It's a bit more accurate than the little VUs over here. So if I just get going, this is the room mic. Let's get some sound on there. Cool. So now we've got the versed mic, which is that one with all that punchy attack right at the centre of the kit. We'll do the overheads. So this is the overhead right. We'll go to overhead left. So you kind of want to get everything to around 0 as best you can, so everything's kind of even. You're getting the cleanest signal possible going into Pro Tools, because if it's too hot going in, it might be clipping. It's going to distort that sound. If it's too low, you're going to have too much of the noise floor, and you can't really edit that noise floor out very well. So the floor tom. Got the rack tom. The hi-hat. Nice and crisp hi-hat. And we've got the snare. So I'll gain up the snare mic separately, but these ones are quite important to check the phase, because these guys are looking at the same space essentially and picking up the same part of the kit, so you want them to be working together quite well. Snare bottom. Right, cool, so I'm going to check these in mono, and I've got to flip the polarity, and we've got a polarity flipper on the channel, which is handy. So you might be able to hear that the low end side of it's kind of dropped out. It's quite a thin snare. Pull it back, and you've got a bit more of that doof, that punchiness. Cool, and we'll just do the kick. Cool, and I'll have a little check of the overhead. That was very loud, my bad. The phase of the snare with the overheads is what I was going to say. So it's there, it could probably be a little bit better, but we'll roll with it. Cool. So, Aaron, right, I'm going to send you a little headphone mix. Would you just like some of your track and the click? Cool. Right, so the fallback I'm going to send to Aaron. I'm going to start playing his track, and we'll get some levels going to him. So, if you give me a thumbs up when you're good, Aaron. So for that thumbs up. Cool, he's all good. Sweet. Right, I will send you on your way. Oh, can't hear me. I'll send you on your way for recording now. Cool. Let's get back to the start of the session. Cool. Let's have a little listen. So, this is the Pro Tools. We've got everything recording in here. And then here's Aaron in the live room. So with Aaron's mix, I'll show you on the desk. He is sending it pre-fader. So basically it means if I do this, Aaron's still got his headphone mix. Obviously we want to get rid of that click. Nobody likes to click, it's very annoying. But this is kind of good if you want to say I just want to listen to the kick. I've just got that kick there and I can, do I like it? Judge whether I like it. If there's any frequencies I might want to make a note of for mixing later that I might not be too happy with. That kind of thing. So yeah, the pre-fade is really quite important for that, because if you start turning stuff down, it's really going to throw your artist off. Give that a listen to the track. So that is Aaron all done. Thank you very much, Lee Aaron. So yeah, that is pretty much the session in here. We've got all the levels going in. This session is one that will be heading up to Spirit, but we'll talk about that in just a second. So yeah, I think there might be some questions.
Lauren, can you tell us what's the difference in using large diaphragm and small diaphragm condensers for overheads?
Sure, so large diaphragms, other than the obvious of having a larger diaphragm, they're going to add like more colour to the stereo image. It might give the effect of having like a bigger kit, and it's just less natural sounding than a small diaphragm. Like the small diaphragm is very much exactly what the kit is going to sound like. It just picks up exactly what you're hitting, essentially. It doesn't add its own flavour to it.
What would you do if you were recording a full band and the drums were too loud?
So I would probably, if you've got baffle boards, try and put some baffle boards around there. That'll just isolate the kit a bit more. If the snare's an issue or the toms are an issue, you can try and dampen them with like t-shirts, stuff like that. Yeah, that's pretty much.
And how can I know that when there's a bad phase relationship?
So if there's a bad phase relationship, we'll touch on if there's a good one, there's a big drop out of the low end. So if there's a bad one, you won't notice much change. So if I was to flip the snare ones, nothing would drop out. It would kind of sound the same as it did with it not flipped. So yeah.
And can you tell us a bit about the course that you're studying on?
Yeah. So I'm on the industry course, which it's 2 nights a week, currently Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's a super hands-on course. You come in, if you're on the very first phase, you'll be taught how the desk works, how signal flow works, that kind of thing. And then there's sections of it that are about Pro Tools. You'll have a Pro Tools exam, optionary Logic exam in the first phase, which is quite good because I know a lot of people use Logic at home. And yeah, you get a lot of studio time, a lot of hands-on. There's loads of equipment like mics you can book out to come in. There's drum kits you can book out, guitar cabs, all that kind of stuff. And they just teach you how to do it good and then how to break the rules of doing it good. So, yeah. So, as I said, we'll be swapping over to Lewis Jones in the live room. Not the live room, the Spirit Studios, the studio up in Spirit. It's Spirit Studios. Getting all tongue-tied. Right, so yeah, he's going to be mixing the session for Aaron, basically. He's going to be showing how to make the drums sound good for the track. So yeah, I'll be handing it over to you now, Lewis. Thank you very much for watching, guys.
Cool. Hello, everybody. Like Lauren said, my name is Lewis. I'm a studio assistant here and a tutor. I studied here at Spirit on a degree course in 2013 to 2016. Shortly afterwards, I started working here as well as doing other kind of freelance live sound jobs and studio jobs. Yeah, and that's kind of enough about me, really. So next, we're going to kind of quickly explain to you about this desk itself. So this is Spirit Studio, as Lauren said. It's a beautiful studio. Let me show you this angle. So this is a Neve VR Legend console. It's a big 48 channel Neve desk. It is absolutely wonderful. I mean, I could go on for way too long talking about this specifically, but I'm not going to. As well as in here, we also have a load of outboard gear, some of which we're going to use today, which will be very nice to show you how it all works. If I quickly go to that view again, you should be able to see over on the top left-hand side there is a drum kit that lives in here, and you can't quite see it just out of shot. There is a mini grand piano which we have on loan from the Royal Northern College of Music, RNCM. This studio it's a third-year studio, and it comes kind of completely self-sufficient. It has its own microphones, it has its own lovely speakers you can see here, the Yamaha NS10s, and also these pair of PMC absolute monsters. They're wonderful. Yeah, it's obviously an advanced studio. You don't come in here on your first week and go, oh, I know how to use this. You kind of build up to it throughout the 3-year degree or the industry course. But it is a really, really nice room to use. So, yeah, obviously you've just seen Lauren in that session recording those drums for Aaron there. What we're going to do in this one is mix those drums. So we're going to kind of do two different things. We're going to mix them on the desk, kind of the analog way of doing things, the old way of doing things really, and then also mix them in Logic Pro, which we're going to kind of almost compare the two really and see the kind of differences. So first off, I'm just going to turn on the Mac because it's gone to sleep, and then we will put through the music and you can hear each microphone separately. So that's when it wakes up. There we go. Cool. So let's hear this. Cool, so there we have our drums. So I'm just going to strip it back and we're going to go straight from the start. So we're going to go kick, snare, hats, the toms, overheads, the versed mic that both Greg and Lauren were talking about. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then our room mic. And we also have in here the backing track as well that Aaron was playing to. Awesome. So yeah, like I said, we're going to strip it right back and go right from the beginning. So I'm kind of going to go along everything as if we were mixing it kind of properly, so I'm going to start with some leveling out everything, and then we'll go into doing some EQ and stuff like that. So I've got my kick, my snare drum, the snare bottom, our hi-hat mic, the rack tom, the floor tom, both overhead microphones, reversed mic, which sounds like this, and then also our room mic. So first off, I'm just going to kind of level everything out so that it's already sounding nice before any kind of other processing, really. So let's go and do that. And then I'm also going to pan everything so it will be kind of in stereo, so we'll have some things on that speaker, some in there, some in the middle, and it could be a nice kind of image of as if you were looking at a drum kit. So there's a very quick kind of leveling out of everything there. I've panned our hi-hat over to our left-hand side over here. Also the overheads that Lauren and Greg were talking about are panned completely left and right, so you're kind of listening to it in stereo, really. And then our rack and our floor tom are also kind of, as if you want to imagine it like this, or like kind of here and here. So they're kind of as if you were going around the drum kit. Cool, so we're going to go back to our kick and do a little bit of EQing. So some of you may already know what EQ is, and if you didn't know what EQ is, basically if you imagine in your car or in a stereo or even on your iPhone or whatever, they all have a built-in EQ. So when you notice there's a bass and a treble and maybe a mid control that you can have less or more, every mixing desk, every software has an EQ into it. So basically, it's just a much more intricate and precise version. So we can boost and cut certain frequencies to make certain sounds, certain instruments just work better within a mix. So we're going to start doing that with the kick. So you notice there, that top end does not sound very nice at all. So we're going to take most of that right out. A bit more click in there, but by itself it already sounds fairly decent. So we're going to move on quickly to our snare drum. So here's our snare. One interesting thing about this, which hopefully you can hear, there is a resonant frequency which sounds really bad. I'm going to find that resonant frequency and then take that right out of the snare drum so that it doesn't inhibit our overall snare sound. So that kind of awful sound there, we are completely going to take that out. So that's now sounding a lot nicer. If you are interested, that is around about kind of between 750 and 800 hertz, that little frequency. We have our snare bottom. That's fine, not going to bother with anything on that. Next up we have our hi-hat mic. So with that, I'm just going to take a load of the bottom end out of it so that it's not picking up much more than just the hi-hat itself. We have our rack and our floor. So with these, I'm going to pan them left and right as I told you. I'm just going to loop a section on Logic here. I can show you that. There we are. So we're going to quickly just loop this section here. Around about there. rack and our floor, I don't know if you're able to hear it, but they're kind of going around like this, which is pretty nice. So that is pretty cool. I'm not going to bother with any EQ on these at the minute. Our overheads. So a little bit of the low end out there as well, just to kind of, again, not kind of inhibit our tom mics and the kick mic. We don't need as much as the low end. So we also have the verse microphone. That sounds really cool. And then the room mic as well. So we don't really need to do any EQing on all of these things. So the next thing that I'm going to do, I've done leveled stuff out. We have the pan and also EQ on a lot of our microphones. Next thing I'm going to do is add in some more kind of interesting stuff. So I'm going to use some of this outboard gear down here. So I'm going to add some compression on the snare drum and also on the verse microphone. We're going to crush that quite a lot. And then we'll also add some reverb to probably the snare and the toms as well, just to have a bit of life into the drums. And then we'll kind of add the track in and see how everything's sitting. So first off, compression is a technique really, or an actual thing that is a compressor. And it basically, what a compressor is doing is it's lowering the dynamic range basically. So for instance, if our snare drum, you might hit it softly, might hit it hard. That kind of is our dynamic range. What a compressor will do will literally compress, so it'll bring the kind of the highest level down a little bit so that everything is much closer together, so you don't have things jumping up and things just sounding really out of place. It's essentially smoothing something out if you use it correctly. So we're going to use this Uri 1176 here, and also this TubeTech CL1B down here. So these are really industry standard outboard compressors. They're really lovely, especially the 1176, which is kind of like a legend in the compressor world. Cool, so let's go and do that. So the way I need to do this, if you can see, I need to patch in, using these Bantam cables, the insert of whichever track we want to use. So for this, we're going to use the snare drum, which is channel 14. So I'm going to patch in here channel 14 into our TubeTech compressor. That is that. And then also come out of the TubeTech back into the channel using an insert. So I should start to hear this. So that, if you can see this, you probably can't quite see the meter on there, but the meter is going a bit crazy. So I can now completely alter the compression on this TubeTech compressor on just the snare drum specifically. So it instantly adds a lot of punch to this snare drum, and it's starting to sound pretty good, to be fair, and that's just on the snare top microphone. Next up, I'm going to add the 1176 onto the verse microphone. So here we go, insert send into channel 21, I believe, into the 1176. You'll remember that by the end of this. And then insert return into the output. Cool, so that should be our 1176. I can also see on here now that the 1176 is also going a little bit mad, so let's hear what that sounds like, shall we? let's go to a different part of the track here in Logic. So that's adding a lot of punch to that already punchy versed microphone. Cool. So if I add all this in together, we can kind of probably need to re-level out the snare and the versed mic just to check everything is still sounding good. Cool. One last thing I want to do on the desk before we move over into Logic is I would very much like to add in some reverb on the snare and probably the toms. So basically we're going to be using this Lexicon reverb unit here, which is again another industry standard piece of equipment. It looks really ridiculous, I know, but promise me, it sounds really good. So in this desk the reverb is currently hardwired into auxiliary 1 and 2, so it means I don't have to do any patching or anything like that, which is really nice, and it returns up here. So I'm just going to turn that on and make sure I'm sending on the snare to this. I'm going to add this into the toms as well. I'm going to go back to that section in Logic where the toms are going crazy. Everything's starting to sound a little bit crazy still, but as soon as I add in the backing track, I'm hoping everything's going to kind of gel together a little bit more, so you're not just listening to some raw drums. So let's do that. We'll go from the start of the track. So I hope you kind of agree that that's sounding pretty nice already. Obviously there's loads more that I could do if we had way more time, but obviously we don't. So that's kind of a very quick analog mix session using drums, using some of the outboard here, using the reverb, the EQ on the desk, this Lexicon reverb there. And what I'm going to do now for the kind of the last 5-10 minutes of this session is we're going to kind of do the exact same thing, but do it in Logic itself. So it means that we can kind of show you the digital, the analog version on this, and then also the digital version in the computer. So I'm going to quickly switch over to that session and we'll have a look in the computer. So you should be able to see that in there. I can make me appear. Hello. So here is the same session, but ever so slightly mixed. If any of you use Logic, this will look really familiar. If you don't, then it won't look as familiar. But Logic is a DAW produced by Apple, actually. What you saw Lauren using before, she was using Pro Tools produced by Avid. As well in the building here, we use Ableton a lot more for electronic music. I think Aaron actually made the track that the main track in here was actually made in Ableton. So yeah, we're just using Logic just as a difference really, but we don't have to be. Basically this is a software version of a desk, pretty much. So what I can do in here, I'm going to play the track and I'm going to run through everything, as in we're going to go kick, snare, basically the same thing we did on the desk, but just in the software. So straight off, to me, this already sounds very different to it coming out of the desk. It's a lot cleaner, but not necessarily as exciting, not as bright. And the main reason for that is because it's not using the preamps of the desk. We're coming straight out of Logic's own digital preamps, is a good way of thinking about it. So we can listen straight to our kick. So that has some compression on it, and also this little bit of EQ, which is a visual version of the ones we saw on the desk before. One cool thing that I've done on this little track, which you might have noticed if you were very eagle-eyed, or you might not have, with this kick drum, it sounds okay, but it's kind of lacking a little bit of low end. So especially for this kind of music, what I've done is I've done this nice trick in Logic, which you can do in any DAW, but if you go to track up here and then you find it, replace or double drum track, which is there. It's grayed out because I'm not selecting a drum track. It basically means that I can turn the waveform of this drum track into MIDI notes, which then means I can then add in a synthesizer on it, or a drum machine, or something of that ilk. So for this specific drum, I've added in this kind of 808 style low-end kick drum, which sounds really, really nice alongside the other kicks. So it sounds like this by itself. Added in with the kick drum. So it's adding that lovely low-end kind of push, which is beautiful. Snare top is compressed as well, and also running into a drum plate using this Space Designer reverb, which is just Logic sound. That sounds a little something like this. So I'm going to gloss over the snare bottom and the hi-hats because they're pretty self-explanatory. And what I would like to show you next is, very quickly, this little section here. So, as you can see, that's looping over a section of the rack tom there, but you're not hearing any sound until the rack tom is hit, basically. basically what this means is what's on this, if you can see in here, is something called a noise gate. You can get outboard versions of these, or you can have them in there. And basically what this means is you can set it to a certain level where sound will not pass through at all until you want it to, basically. So you can set the threshold so that every time he would hit that rack tom, or you want to hear the rack tom, only that pops through and nothing else does. And I can show you comparing it to that, to the floor tom, which I haven't put a gate on. You should be able to hear the kind of difference where you're just hearing the rack and then also the rest of the microphones that are spilling through. So that's hearing everything, and the rack tom, you shouldn't be hearing anything until the rack tom plays. So that is that. Next up we have our overheads, which we're losing a bit of the bottom end on there, which is the same thing we did on the desk. Verse mic is running through Logic's basically version of this 1176 down here. Which sounds pretty cool. And like I said, we're going into the drum plate on with the snare top, the rack floor, the rack and the floor. And then basically every drum, apart from the main backing track, is running through this, again, Logic stock compressor. It's actually really good. But everything is running through this. So if I go from the start here. Play this to the end of the track and then we will be pretty much done.
Ideas that you fall in love with.
Cool, so there is our very, very quick 2 ways of mixing drums on the desk and in Logic or any kind of software DAW. I believe we may have some questions next for us to answer, and yeah, I suppose, are there any?
Thanks, Lewis. That sounded great. A few questions. Do you prefer analog mixing or mixing in the box?
Cool. So if you couldn't hear that, I was asked, do you prefer analog mixing or mixing in the box? Obviously, I showed you two, kind of both those ways here. I think it really depends on what you're doing. I mean, for like any kind of like live music or rock music, jazz, you know, anything that's kind of real, as it were. Mixing analog is great, but on the other hand, you're probably not going to have one of these in your house, which is why you should come here. Whereas likewise, mixing in the box, mixing in Logic or anything like that, obviously means that you can, if you have that in your computer, you can take that absolutely anywhere. If you're on a flight, you're on a train, you're just sat in your bedroom, you're going to have that with you if you have a laptop, obviously, or a computer. So it totally depends, and obviously electronic music is kind of born out of DAWs and out of drum machines and stuff like that, so it's born out of the digital side of things. Me personally, I write music a lot in Logic itself, so I suppose by virtue of that I prefer doing it in Logic, but that's just because it's much more portable. Because if I was to come and bring a band in here and record on this and mix in this, why would I not want to do that? That is a really wonderful thing to be able to do.
Okay, brilliant. A couple more questions. When mixing drums, would you use drum replacement software?
Cool. So mixing drums, would you use drum replacement software? I think again that totally depends on the style of music. Obviously, I mentioned kind of like jazz music before and stuff like that. Then there'd be no need, as long as the recording was good enough, there'd be no need to replace a kick drum with some kind of really subby 808 style kick drum, or a snare with like a hand clap or something like that. There'd be no need whatsoever. Whereas with stuff like metal music or like heavy rock, stuff like that, you might want a really clicky kick drum or an almost electronic sounding snare that's just completely fake but really works for the music. There's a couple of really good, like I said, Logic has its own kind of replacement, not software, but its own thing. You can do the same in Pro Tools and Ableton and all that kind of stuff. There's also a really good one called Slate Drums, which does the exact same thing, and they're kind of built on that. So again, it's totally genre or mix dependent, as opposed to I would all the time or I wouldn't all the time.
And then one more we'll go for. Would you use noise gates on each drum microphone?
So would I use noise gates on each drum microphone? In a perfect world, probably, because it'd be so much easier to mix because there'd be no spill. But that is a perfect world, which we're not always in. So obviously on here I showed you in Logic there was a noise gate in there on the rack tom. So that is really easy because I don't need, obviously the drummer's probably, unless it's a really tom heavy song, the drummer's probably only going to hit the toms during fills or the odd time during a beat. So the rest of that time, if there's just kind of some low end kind of rumble coming off that microphone, I don't really want that at all. So on certain drums I would always gate them, probably on a snare, toms definitely, and potentially a kick, but not always. I think it totally depends on, one, the recording, two, the style of music, and just it might not work. You might have some kind of weird digital like thing on the gate which just isn't sounding very good at all, or it might work, who knows. Cool.
Great, that was it. Thank you.
Wonderful. So now I believe you guys are going to suddenly magically appear downstairs in our Charlie Jones live venue, which Greg is going to be showing. You saw Greg before. He's going to be showing you a kind of live performance. He's going to be doing the live sound side of things using a digital desk and showing you the stage setup. And then Aaron's going to be performing this same song with like his own in-ear monitoring system and playback system, and then also playing the drums at the same time. So I believe we're going to go down there now, and I shall see you in a little bit.
Hello, welcome back. We're now in the Charlie Jones live venue. We're carrying on with the theme of drums, but we're going to have a look at drums for live sound. So we have a little scenario for you guys today, which I'll explain in a second. We're in the Charlie Jones live venue, which is our dedicated concert venue, really. We can have events there. We've had many events. We're going to have a lot in the future. But it's mainly for students to practice live sound. We have a lot of very good industry standard mixing desks. We have a stage over there, which you'll see in a second. And today I'm going to use the Soundcraft VI1, which is a digital desk that you'll find in many venues around the country and around the world. We're going through a PA, which is a line array of DNB T10, and we have 5 subs, which are DNB Y subs. Again, industry standard, they sound amazing. Here's the scenario. We have Aaron again on drums. He's on stage. We'll go and see him in a second. He's going to play along to the track, which, if you've been following today, is the track that he's made for the day. He's going to be playing it from this little playback system that he has, but he'll be outputting it as separate tracks back to me at front of house. What else does he have? Aaron has an SPD next to him, I can see that, and his drum kit. So we're going to go on stage right now. We're going to have a look at how we've mic'd this up for today. Hello again, Aaron. Hello. So, drum kit again. Same configuration as what we had in the studio earlier. You have a bass drum, 2 toms, a snare, 3 cymbals this time, which I think is different, and a hi-hat. So I'll go through the microphones that we've been using for today. For bass drum, we're actually using 2 microphones this time. We have a Shure Beta 91 inside. It's a condenser microphone that is really good at capturing the clicky sound of the bass drum. It's a flat one, it's a condenser, it's a boundary microphone, which I won't go into details, but that's the type of microphone. We stick it in, usually it's laid on top of whatever cushion or damping there is in the bass drum. We've got this literally inside the bass drum, and again we have a Shure Beta 52 going in through the porthole. So that's the 2 microphones of the bass drum. What I'm hoping to get with that is a very clicky sound from inside, and then something more boomy from the outside dish of the bass drum, and I can blend those 2 when I'm mixing live. Snare wise, again, we're back on the Shure SM57, industry standard. One at the top, one at the bottom. We need to think about polarity again, which is if these 2 microphones are both on the snare, we'll have to reverse the polarity of one of them, otherwise the phase cancellation might happen. Tom wise, we have the Sennheiser E604, which are little clip-on mics. They're really good on toms. Again, you'll find them in live situation all the time. On the hi-hat, not super conventional, but I've put a 57 because I really like it. You'll find engineers putting a small diaphragm condenser like we did in the studio. I think a 57 is ace. I think a 57 is ace on pretty much everything. Overhead-wise, we have AKG C460. I'm spotting them kind of on the cymbals, still trying to get the rough distance with the snare, but I'm less worried about mono compatibility and phase cancellation for this scenario here. So I really want to capture both sides of the kit cymbal-wise to project that into the room. What else do we have here? We have Aaron SPD, which is basically rubber pads that he's going to hit, and that's going to trigger sound. We would usually DI that, but Aaron has his own setup, which I'll come to in a second. Next to him, we have a Sematic playback device, which is basically a player that can output loads of different tracks separately. There's loads of jack outputs at the back. So what he's done for us is he's bounced all the different parts of his track, or at least groups of stems, separately, so I can have them and mix them separately at the mixing desk. So we'll have the bass on one channel, some percussions, all the synths have been bounced to a stereo track, etc., etc. All these things should be going through DI boxes, because we're not to go into too much detail, but we need to have balanced signals to go into there, and a DI box is the way to convert that signal. Nothing is worse than a band showing up at a venue and telling the sound engineer we need 12 DI boxes. That's a pain. Aaron is well prepared. He's got his own DI rack, which he's brought with him, and he already patched everything going into that DI rack, and I just have to grab XLRs at the back. That's an ideal solution. So basically his SPD and all the tracks, which I think there's 8 tracks in total, including a click track he's going to follow, are all going into his DI rack, and I'm just grabbing the end of that and I can plug that straight into the desk. Ideal world. Next to the Sematic is one last thing, which is a little mixing desk, and that is for Aaron's in-ear monitor mix. If you can see on the cameras, I hope you can, Aaron is wearing molded in-ear phones. And the idea is that we're not going to use any wedges today. We could use a combination of wedges and his in-ears, but we're just going for in-ears for today. And the idea is that he's sending me all this to the desk, and I'm going to send him back a mix that I'll be doing with him during sound check. well balanced of everything. The idea is that in-ear phones are really, really useful because they block the sound around and you get a very clear mix. You don't have to worry about feedback between microphone and wedges. But I need to be conscious that I need to also send him some of the drum kit, because if I'm just sending him tracks, they're really good at blocking everything out, and the drums are just going to sound like they're very distant underwater, and it's not helpful. So what I'll be giving Aaron in his mix is the SPD, all his tracks, plus the click, and all of the drum kit as well, so we'll have a perfect picture. If this was a full band situation, today we're kind of like simulating a full band because of restrictions. But if this was a full band situation, I would also be giving him some of the single voice, some guitar, some bass, pretty much everything would be going into it. That's pretty much it for the setup on stage. We're going to go back to the mixing desk and we're going to have a look at how it's laid out on the desk, how it's all organized. See you in a bit. Cool, we're back on the Soundcraft VI1. Let me explain the layout to start with. The left panel is all the inputs, any audio signal going into the desk. All these. So I can quickly go through them. Just like I've described on stage, we now have kick in, kick out, snare, top, bottom, hi-hat, rack tom, floor tom, overhead left and right, and then Aaron's tracks. Because it's a digital desk, if I needed more tracks than this, we actually have additional banks kind of hidden underneath, and I can just flip to them. Today, this will be all I need, I think. There's a click track as well, which I've left on the second bank because I'm not going to need that for the PA, and I'm already sending to. So inputs on the left side. Right panel is all the outputs, anything leaving the desk. So on the far right, we have the master fader. This will control literally the mix going to the PA in the room. So usually we'll leave that at 0, but if anything gets too crazy, I can turn it down a bit, or I can turn it up as well, depending what's happening. Then still on the output section, we have what we call auxes, which is just another way to output some signal separately, not going to the PA. So we could output them to external outboard, reverb, even delay, just anything you have that you want to use for your mix, but that's usually more like an old school way of doing it these days. A lot of effects are living inside the desk. But one of the big things we can do with this is that this aux here, this fader, is actually the mix that I'm sending to Aaron. So there's a cable at the back of the desk, traveling back on stage and entering Aaron's little mixing desk. So how do we do the mix for Aaron? We've already done the sound check for this workshop, but if I select this monitor aux, I can have a look. If you can see here, the faders have changed. This is the balance that I'm sending to Aaron. This is a super useful way of having a visual representation of the mix you're sending to someone, especially if you start having loads of individual mixes. And it's really hands-on. If Aaron is like, I need more pads, I can quickly grab that fader, turn it up. So again, if I go back to my mix, the one that I'm doing in the venue as a front of house mix, this is it. And if you look on the screen and I'm flipping it, this is now the mix that I'm sending to Aaron. Really useful. It takes a while to do an in-ear monitor mix. You have to kind of listen as well to his own mix. I can solo that and listen to my position to make sure it's not completely wacko in his ears. A lot of touring bands have their own monitor engineers, and the idea is that there will be a second mixing desk, usually stage left, so to the right when you're looking at the stage. Because it's quite a very intricate thing. To have a really good in-ear mix, you really need to spend time. And if you travel with your own guy who's going to do your mix for you, who knows your preferences, who knows what you need for which songs as well, because it might vary and they might have different snapshots saved between songs where they can just load next song and the mix will be different. Today, I'm doing monitor mix from front of house. Right, so we're quickly going to go through the microphones that we're going to use. So Aaron, if you can just give me for now a groove, not with a track or anything, but just you playing the drums, and I will fire them up from here. So go for it. So that's our first kick. That's toms. Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. And then we have the overheads to kind of get the cymbals as well. So I'm going to leave these in. And very quickly, actually, we're going to listen to the track. Can you play me the track without you playing, Aaron? Whoop, let me turn that down. So this is what Aaron is sending me. Let me turn it down a bit. This is what Aaron is sending me from his Cymatic playback device. So we'll have the bass track, some percussions, pads as a stereo channel, vocals, and an SPD. It's worth noting as well that me turning faders down here, keep it playing, Aaron, for now, just leave it on. Me turning faders down here to change the mix happening in the room will not change the mix going to Aaron. It's called pre-fade send. We're not going to go into that, but it's a super useful feature where I can just be, whoa, the bass is too loud, but it's not going to change anything for Aaron because we've already worked on his mix before and he's happy with that. So we have all this. There's a little click happening here as well, which I don't want in the room, but it's for Aaron to play along to. So Aaron, stop that for that. That's great, thank you. Now I'm going to open all the microphones. So now we have the microphones on the drums are live and the tracks as well. We have Aaron's monitor going through. And I think, Aaron, we're good to go for a take, if you want to go for it.
themselves that way, and sometimes ideas that you fall in love with.
Cool, thank you, Aaron. There's a nice little David Lynch clip at the end, which I like. Okay, so how did we sound check all this just before the workshop started? So with drums, you could do it in two separate ways, really. You could just have each individual drum being hit. If you've arrived early at a gig, you've all heard this. It's the most boring thing in the world. You'll have the drummer just playing the kick forever while I'm adjusting and tweaking it, then move on to the snare and everything. I quite like to have the drummer playing a groove so all the mics are interacting with each other. And then you can do your thing. Your thing being EQ, if you need to adjust any of the microphones. If placement-wise you're happy, but it still needs some things. For example, the kick in here, I've put some EQ where I took some of the 200 out because I wanted less low end for this, but I've boosted high mids because I really wanted it to be clicky as possible. For the low end, I still have the kick out, which does the job, that's fine. But I really think that live sound, usually you'll find the bass is pretty overwhelming, so I like to have a kick that really cuts through and people can hear it. I've also kind of beefed up the snare a bit by adding some low end. I've cut down a lot of the low end in the hi-hat because I don't need any of the low frequency of a hi-hat. I just want a little sizzle that's happening. And then more important, I think, for live drums, I've put gates on. So gates are a process where you stop the sound happening, nothing goes through until the sound is loud enough to open the gate. So you'll have nothing, nothing, silent, silent, silent. You'll have some sound and then it closes again. The idea being that you want to get rid of all the external sound around the drums when it's not being hit, and then once the floor tom is being hit, the gate opens, you can hear the floor tom, and then it shuts again. You can tweak that, you can decide when the gate would open, how fast it will be opening, how fast it will be closing again, all these things. And because of that, you can really sculpt a whole sound. I find that, for example, the floor tom, if it's bashed away and there's no gate, it's going to sound very, very roomy. You can be in a venue where there's a lot of standing waves and there's a lot of low end that's starting to just kind of eat your mix away. But if you put a gate, you have your floor tom happening and then it goes away. Also, I've kind of EQ'd Aaron's track for this room as well. I've done a few things, taking a bit of low end, the vocals, I've added a bit of presence so they would cut through a bit more. I've compressed the vocals a bit as well, so I would have more of a consistent speech happening. And also one thing I want to mention is just because you've done a great sound check and it sounds great doesn't mean while the performance is happening you're just like hands in pocket going like this is ace. There's a lot of things happening. It's a human on stage. Aaron, can see you. He's playing, it's very dynamic, lots of things can happen. So you'll usually find yourself riding the faders, doing a lot of things. Think of a singer, think of like even guitar solos, you want to push that up. When there's a solo, you want to put it back down when the solos happen. So it's a very active thing, mixing a live sound. There's a lot of things that can happen. Usually if you're touring and you're bringing your own desk, or you can do it on in-house desks as well, you can save snapshots, which will be one state of the desk. So for example, these faders, this way, I can set them like this. And for the next song, you need to do this in rehearsals really. You can't really do it on the day. For the next song, maybe I'll have a different balance. And you can save all these, and you'll have them saved in an order, like the order of the set for the day, and then you can just go from one song to the next, and everything will be changed. A monitor engineer will do that as well, because performers might want different things depending on the songs as well. I think that kind of like wraps it up. Let me think. Snare top, snare bottom, I've definitely flipped the polarity, that's what I was saying, because you want that to get a beefier snare. And otherwise, I think we're done for today's workshop. Thank you a lot, Aaron, for playing that track again. And then we're going to have questions, so I'm ready for questions.
Yeah, so we've got a question from Harry. He wants to know, how would the mic setup for drums differ if you're in a live setup or doing it in a studio?
Harry, that's a good question. I think we need to think about the aim between the two things. I think in a recording studio, we're aiming at capturing a performance, all of it. So we want to hear the whole drum kit. Live sound is more about reinforcing. So we need to think about the fact that if I was to turn all these faders down and Aaron was to play, especially Aaron because he really goes for it, it's already quite loud. So there's something to think about in this, which is maybe we don't even need in smaller venues to mic up cymbals. Maybe we don't need to put a snare top and a snare bottom. So it's all about just reinforcing what you can already hear. The goal of live sound primarily is for people to hear a balance of everything. If you're in a pub, you're definitely not going to stick a lot of microphones around a drum kit. So I would say, placement-wise, avoiding spillage as well, because it's a big one for live sound, because you'll have a lot of things next to each other. You might have a guitar amp that's really close to the drum kit, so you might think about the pattern of your microphones, how they're capturing things. If you have a mic that's way too open, capturing way too many things, you might get way too much of the guitar, the bass. Even if you think about the wedges that are at the front of the stage for the performers, that might go back into your microphones and stuff. You'll very rarely find, let's say, a anomaly condenser on stage. That would be bonkers, because that's going to capture way too much. So I would say we'll need to think about spillage a bit more, and also the fact that you don't need to mic up everything if you don't have to in a room. And that's about it. Thanks, Harry.
If you can only have one mic on the bass drum, what would you choose, kick in or kick out?
If you have a really reduced number of microphones, you have to think about what you want to be heard through the PA. If it's going to be, let's say, like a jazz setup or something, I'm more than happy with a kick out just to get something a bit boomy that kind of drives the whole thing. If you're doing a rock band and there's guitars involved with loud amps and a bass cab and all that thing, I'd go kick in just so I get something really clicky and it cuts through the mix, and that can really drive the song. That's it.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about your job as an engineer?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a tutor here at Spirit, but I'm also a freelance sound engineer. And I do a lot of live sound. I work in different venues, and I also go on tour with a couple bands. We've got this project, one is called Shadow Party and the other one is called Sea Fever. Sea Fever has just released a single, I think you should go and check it out. And we go on tour with these guys. Sea Fever has just started, and so we're a bit kind of on hold, just like everyone else in the country at the minute, so we're planning tours for next year. But with Shadow Party, we've been around the UK a few times. We went to Italy, we kept really good contacts with everyone, and we're planning on coming back. So I usually do, for now we're playing medium-sized venues, so I pretty much do everything. So we won't have a touring monitor engineer, but I'll do monitors from front of house, so I'll take care of the sound for the audience, but also whatever is happening monitor-wise for people on stage. And I'm usually their tour manager as well, so I've got many hats. And that's it for me today. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to Aaron's Haigh workshop, and he's going to tell us about how he's managing his career as a professional in the music industry. Thanks.
Hello everybody, I'm sure you're sick of seeing me today, but I'm going to talk to you now instead of just playing drums at you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the new courses that they've got here at Spirit, one that I'm quite jealous of actually, because it kind of encompasses a lot of different areas within being an audio professional that I wish that I'd have had at the start of my career. So first and foremost, I'm a drummer. That sort of morphed itself into being a producer, and then those two things have kind of come together to a point now where I kind of look after a couple of bands' live shows as well as play drums for them. So yeah, the education that I've had from various places, including Spirit, has sort of led me to the jobs that I do in music now. So yeah, first and foremost, I'm a drummer, which there is a slide of me playing drums. There you go. So yeah, that's kind of my bread and butter really. But that being sort of the thing that I focused on most all the way through like my early life of getting into music, I weren't really thinking about production things, and then I've been lucky enough really to fall into a couple of jobs just from like having good relationships with people in the music industry. Went on to being a drum tech for a couple of bands, including Cortinas, who are from Manchester, DMAs, Nile Rodgers and Chiche, the Chainsmokers. There's me as a drum tech. So yeah, like the way I've sort of progressed with my education and my knowledge base basically that's helped me to get certain places in my career has been being under a lot of pressure. Like when I first got the job as a drum tech, I'd never been a drum tech before, so I knew how to set drums up. That was a skill that I had as a byproduct of being a drummer, but being a drum tech was something that I had to learn under pressure. So the thing that I see about the EAP course, Entrepreneurial Audio Production, is that you're learning all of these different skill sets, so you can sort of project your own career in future to think, I'm learning about this area of music and I'm learning about lots of different things, so there's more options for you. Sort of when I started, I didn't really have the options because I thought I just want to be a drummer sort of thing, and I've kind of gone just finding my way. So yeah, I think what I wanted to talk to you about was I'm very much like trying to figure out my career as I go, and I've been really lucky to meet the people I've met in the last couple of years that have opened up opportunities for me and things. So yeah, I've got a couple of things that I have felt that have been really beneficial for me moving forward. And if you're looking to study a course like the Entrepreneurial course, then these are some good things to think about, because you're already thinking about your education. That's obviously progress, but we're all trying to get better to have careers in this thing, in music. So these are a few little things that I've found have been really helpful for me. So yeah, so create a workspace for yourself. So I kind of put myself under a lot of pressure to start with, like thinking, right, if I'm getting into music production, then I need a studio that's all singing, all dancing. And what I've come to realise is that I just need a space that I'm comfortable in, that I want to spend time in. So yeah, this is a picture of my little studio here. It's actually in a shipping container that's not made to be a studio at all. But for me, it's just a comfortable space, and sometimes I work on music there, I prep for gigs there, even do invoices and things like that. You're working for yourself a lot of time in music, so you have to have your own strategies of getting things done. And I find that having a workspace like that, I get into work mode rather than doing things in my bedroom or my living room or whatever. But I will say, I was really lucky to drop on a workspace like that. If your workspace is your bedroom or it's a corner of your living room, whatever works for you, but I find having a place to do your work is a really good thing to have. Or it has been for me anyway. Yeah, next slide please. Yeah, keep learning. So obviously if you're going into higher education, then you obviously want to keep learning. The way I keep learning is sort of pushing myself into uncomfortable positions, really. So saying yeah to things that I've not done before, that forces me to keep learning. And then in turn, I find that the more I learn, the more I'm inspired to take on different roles and stuff, really. So that keeps it exciting for me. Not just sticking to the skill set I've got, but it makes everything more dynamic. Your day-to-day working life can be different every day, and then it keeps it exciting for you as well. So I would say always keep learning, even when you actually finish your degree course, and that's going to keep you in good stead to keep getting work and new types of work, really. Yeah, so that, I mean, the picture that's on at the minute, that's a good example of putting yourself out of your comfort zone. So that were actually the first ever drum tech gig that I did. So that were like headlining neighbourhood festival with Cortinas, and I'd never been a drum tech before, so that were a really scary moment for me. But it's 3 years later I still work for them, so that it proved to be a good risk to take. My eyes are so bad. Connect and stay connected. So when you obviously, the good thing about studying a degree course is you look, like we've said before, learning new skills. But for me, the way the music industry works, and it has worked for me, is like all the work that I've got has come from relationships that I've built for years. So a good example, getting the job with Cortinas, that came from a relationship that I'd had for like 6 years, and just we did a little bit of recording together, me and a friend of mine, and then he just called me up one day and said, you know about drums, I need a drum tech for this gig. So I find it's been really important to make friendships, and you don't have to fabricate friendships, but you can see who's the people that you get along with and really hold that close to you, because they're the people who are going to be putting you forward for things. And you're going to do that for other people as well who you think are trustworthy. So staying connected with people is one of the most important things that I've done in music, really. Yeah. Choose your projects wisely. This is like, I fall into this pitfall quite a lot, because when people come to you with projects, they find out what you do, if you're a drummer, if you're a producer, and people want to work with you, it makes you feel good when people come to you and say, do you want to work on my project? So, you know, if you've been trying to get into music for so long that now you're in a position where people are asking you to do things, it's hard to say no to projects. But sometimes that's a good thing to do because you can stretch yourself too thin. And I've done that many times. So I'm sure when you start studying at Spirit, there's going to be lots of different opportunities to get involved with different projects. But pick the ones that you think you're going to be best suited to, with the people who you're going to be able to work with best. And you don't have to say yeah to everything. Try and get a lot of different experiences, but just don't spread yourself too thin, I would say. And that's kind of my things that are working for me right now in music after my education's finished and I'm trying to make things happen in my career. So yeah, that's about it from me. Yep, so we're gonna go on to Louise now in Audient 4, and she's gonna talk to you a bit more about some of the education stuff.
I've lumped some of the questions together, so I'll try and answer a few in one big batch for you. Okay. So looking at these, we've got several questions about previous experience and when you apply, what sort of skills are we looking for? Well, I think for the majority you'll have done some music course already, and that could be a BTEC or A level, so you will have some music experience. It may be that your college or other institution has studios or other facilities that puts you in good stead to start a degree programme. We're also looking for experience with yourself, that maybe you have a band, or you go to a youth club, or you do some DJing, and I think that adds an extra weight to your application in general. Just moving on from that, we've had a question previously about mature students as well, who maybe have not come to the formal education route. In those cases, we will still look at applications, we will see if they have any music acumen, we will see if they've been working in the industry themselves or maybe been a part-time DJ. And it may be in those cases, and in some cases where you've done a course that's maybe not been music-based, that we set you some essay or some other small assessment so we can sort of judge your suitability. There's been a few other questions about COVID. Currently we are tier 1, which means we're as safe as we can possibly be. You can probably see in the background there's tape around the places. That puts us in a social distancing area. We're working in several social distancing groups. So at the present, you're in the building every other week. But that means there's a lot of online delivery as well. Now, the blended learning, which you might be familiar with if you're still at school, is that you come into the area, you might come in a studio and have a lecture. The other group will be online, and a very similar scenario to this. And we've got multi-cameras in the room, so we can swap and change rather, to see the studio or other areas. We can look at the different cameras, so you can see me from a different angle, and so on. That facilitates you being online at home, so you get a full view of the deck. You can see how the console, how things are working, and the tutor can sort of guide you through the process without you being sat in the actual room. Another question, how can potential students apply? What is the application process? So that's all through UCAS. So you can apply through that system, that route. You can apply for other institutions as well. So we then get information that you have applied to us. And then what happens next? Well, we have a UCAS officer who will take a look at those applications. If you have suitable points and credits already, it may be that you get your application verified there and then, and we can offer you a conditional place or an unconditional place. But we would still like you to come into the building. You know, obviously at the moment we're online, but there will probably be opportunities for other open days where you can come on site as well. And I think when you can see and look around at our facilities, that will give you a bit of a guidance as to whether this is an institution you want to study at. So you apply, you get an offer, you can come and take a look at us, or we will send you some links to these videos as well and prior ones. But we do tend to try as best we can interview everybody either in a formal or an informal process, and that can be done in the building or it can be done online. And I think it's really important that it's a two-way thing. You come to sort of us and look at the place, you get to talk about the staff, our facilities, what we offer, but also we can take a look at you as well. And in some cases you might apply for, say, music production, but then we've had a discussion, we find that you might want to go on to something more electronic or DJ based. So I think it works really well in finding the right sort of placement for you. Another one was about deadlines for 2021. Now, without rhyming all those off in a big row, there are quite a few deadlines, and those will be on the UCAS website for you. So there are different stages that you can apply. Even if it's really quite late, we can still look at applications and find a way to get you some sort of form of placement. How many students do we get? It wasn't really clear whether that's in a class or the year. We tend to have a class size of about 20, but we do have several cohorts. So more popular courses, we might have two classes running for the one cohort. But generally the rooms allow for about 20 learners in general. How long have we been offering courses? Well, I've worked in the industry here for about 14 years, I think. So it's a fair amount of time. And before we were in this building, we were elsewhere as well. But I think over the time, what we have learnt is that, we are now excellent in offering professional courses and of an academic standing. And I think some of the feedback we get from external sources is that we have a really good blend of practical, all the fun stuff, because ultimately here to make music, but also the academia side where you have to learn how to write an essay or do a presentation as part of maybe an assessment. And I think those things are really important, because it may be you have to do a presentation to a bank manager, or it may be that you do a presentation to a studio or some other person that can advise you on finance or whatever, or it may be you're actually selling some form of Lizzie, can I just interrupt 1 minute?
Yeah, no worries, that's fine.
I need to show you another screen in a moment. That's just gone offline for the moment. So there's lots of I think things that we teach you in the academic side that can support you in moving forward. And I think Aaron was alluding to things in his presentation prior to this, that you need to be able to find a suitable space or a setup, or make the right contacts and these sort of things, and that will support you move forward. Let's have a look at the questions. I think a key one here is accommodation. Now, we don't offer accommodation directly, with no halls of residence. However, when you make the application, we send out various leaflets and data for you, and in there is a guide to accommodation in the area as well. Okay. Can this be fixed, Lizzie? I want to show you one or two little bits and pieces in a moment that supports your studies here, because the other side of, I suppose, the academic side and welfare is that when you are on a course, you maybe need to know other factors that are going to support you. Now, it may be that you've used Moodle or It's Learning or some other platform. We decided last year to move on to Google Classroom, and I'm just going to show you a little snippet of this now. Okay, so hopefully you can see that screen. And in here, for every module you study with us, you will see that all the way through you are guided to know exactly what you're doing. So you will have a module guide. Most institutions use this kind of format in some form or other, but I think we've fine-tuned this now to tell you what the module is, what the module aims are, what your learning outcomes are, and more importantly, what your assessment is. And that's the first question any learner will talk about in terms of assessments. Okay, so you can see there your weekly schedule, and then a very detailed when your assessment is, what you've got to hand in, etc. And I think that becomes your overall guide for that module. You can see here where we've got now online submissions. It may be in your institution you've had to hand in a memory pen or hand in an actual physical piece of work. We are now aiming towards electronic and handing things in all virtual. And then for those learners that maybe couldn't attend a class for whatever reason, some of this is to do with, I suppose, the blended situation, but it may be that, you know, one day you may have to go to the dentist or you have a day off because you're poorly. What you can then do is look at your module area and see we've got lesson recordings here, and when you click on that you will be able to see the lessons for that particular session, and they will all be listed for you. And then all the way through each session, you've got a session note to tell you what's happening and any classroom resources. Now the idea of this is that in any session that you may attend, we cannot give you every single piece of information in 3 or 4 hour session. So what we expect is that you will then go online and you'll look at supplementary resources, and that will guide you and support you to any extra material that you might need. The one other area I think that hits us all, and we've seen it today, is the technical side. And we do know that sometimes things do go a little bit awry. So in here we have a tech hub, and this is available to all learners that start here. And you can see here we've got an overview of what the tech hub does, any Spirit Studios user accounts if there's issues, because I think the first time any of us log on to a situation, it may be the password doesn't work first time, and there's guidance around that. And all the G Suite things, you know, using Google Classroom and Zooms and video conferencing, and any of the facilities we have here, just in case, because, you know, we do know technology can fail, so just in case, you've got access to all that data. I think I've covered a fair bit of things here, but if there are any more questions, if you want to sort of type those in the panel at the moment, we can answer those for you. I think in terms of assessment, there's a couple of questions on grades. Has COVID affected grades and assessments? Well, I'm hoping by the time you maybe start in September next year, or even later, that COVID may be a thing of the past, or we are delivering in a certain different calibre. However, at the moment, COVID has affected us, and in terms of assessments, we are modifying those. So it may be that you had an in-class presentation, so you would come in a room and do your presentation. We've now made some of those online, so we have a very similar situation to how I'm talking to you now, and multi-screens, where you could deliver a presentation. If you were expected to record maybe a band, it may be that those numbers have been cut down, so you can only allow 2 or 3 people in a recording environment. But I think some of that is about demonstrating your skill as well of how you would overcome a situation, because if you were doing this for live, and again I think Aaron alluded to this, that sometimes things can go wrong, or a band member might turn up, so do you stop the whole recording? Well, the answer is no, you probably don't. You tweak something to make it actually work for you. I think I've covered quite a bit of things here for you. Is there anything else that's come up, Liz? No? Okay. Well, I think I'll leave it there for you. You are allowed to, I think, email in, and if there's any more questions, you can direct those and it'll go to the right member of staff, and we'll allude to answer any questions for you. All right, so hopefully we'll see you in September, and we might have some open days or more of these events that you can attend. Okay, so thanks very much for attending. I think we're now going to pass you over to our principal again, Adrian, to do a final farewell. I think he's in, is he in Spirit? Yeah, so you'll be back in the Spirit studio. Okay, thank you very much.
Good evening, afternoon, rather, everybody. So thank you to Louise, and thank you to everybody else, Lauren, Aaron, Lewis and Greg. Hope you've had a good afternoon with us. We've obviously gone through an awful lot there for you all to see and to hear and to look at, taking you through what is essentially, you know, a whole process of drums from you know its original recording in a live space, up to how that's kind of mixed and produced up here in Spirit, and also how then that can be translated over into live. So that pretty much sort of covers everything that we do. Like Louise just said then at the end, you know, keep any questions coming. I think if you've got any more questions, which is quite normal and understandable after a session like this, or as you go through any of your thought processes of your application, there are an awful lot of points that many students would want us to cover, which we may not have done today. So do keep coming with those questions, and we'll respond to you. Like I said sort of earlier on, you know, I mean, we'll be looking to do what we ordinarily would do, will be to open up our doors for people to want to come and have a look around the studios. As I said, we've got 11 recording studios, this being one of them. You get to answer, you get to ask a lot more questions, and you get to have a lot more things answered for you. You get to see the equipment itself, and give you an opportunity to be sort of quite hands-on with that. So, you know, it won't be this year, obviously, as Christmas is approaching us, but towards the new year and spring, then we'll be looking at having some form of an actual open day where you'll be emailed anyway and welcomed if you want to come back in. So that's pretty much about it for me today. Any questions that you've got for me also, then, you know, I've got an open door and an open email, so, you know, feel free to sort of, you know, ask me anything as well. There might be some questions that you feel haven't been answered today and you'd rather they were answered by me. Yeah, keep them coming. As I say, I hope you've had a really good day. We have. I think it's been absolutely great, and thank you all for attending, and I wish you all a pleasant rest of your weekend, and as we run up to Christmas. And so I think that's about it for everyone. On behalf of everybody, I'd like to say a really, really big thank you, especially to all of those who you haven't seen. So they're the people who made this possible for us today. So the people who you don't see, all of our technicians that make this as seamless as possible for you all. So thank you, and we'll see you very, very soon. All the very best. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.